You've heard the same advice repeated over and over. Detach, don't take it personally, control your mind. And then, on another day, from another voice, you're told the opposite. Go deeper, face your shadow. Your pain holds the key. They both sound right. They both feel like truth. But they lead in opposite directions. One asks you to rise above emotion. The other demands that you enter it. And here's the truth no one tells you. You didn't choose your path. Your psyche did. And it didn't choose what was true. It chose what kept you safe. Your nervous system, your traumas, your MBTI type, your psychological wiring, all of it formed a default. That default wasn't made for freedom, but it was a first map, one you were meant to outgrow. And whether you realize it or not, that default quietly pulled you toward a deeper orientation, one that echoes through some of the most enduring human philosophies. Among the countless psychological schools and philosophies, some individuals are pulled toward Stoic detachment, others toward Jungian descent. But beneath both lies the same essential question. How do you meet your pain? Watch to the end, and you'll uncover something rare about INTJs and something deeper about your own default philosophy, no matter your type. Stoicism is a Greco-Roman philosophy that emerged over 2,000 years ago, founded by Zeno of Citium in the 3rd century BCE, and later shaped by thinkers like Seneca, Epictetus, and Marcus Aurelius. It teaches clarity, self-discipline, emotional restraint, and sovereignty through detachment. It is a philosophy built on logic, virtue, and the power to remain unaffected by the external world. Jungian psychology, on the other hand, is a modern psychological framework pioneered by Swiss psychiatrist Carl Gustav Jung, who lived between 1875 and 1961. As the founder of analytical psychology, Jung introduced the now familiar ideas of the shadow, the collective unconscious, archetypes, and the deep transformative journey of individuation. Where Stoicism says, "Do not be disturbed," Jungian psychology says, "What disturbs you reveals you." Put simply, Stoicism teaches mastery through emotional detachment, discipline, and cognitive control. Jungian thought invites you to descend into the unconscious, face your projections, and integrate the fractured parts of the self. One tells you to transcend emotion. The other tells you to decode it. One calls for stillness. The other calls for descent. And that split, the one you didn't consciously choose, is already shaping how you suffer, how you heal, and how you relate to power. So now the real question isn't which path sounds better. It's this: do you master pain by detaching from it, or by decoding it? If you're into MBTI, this will speak directly to your architecture. And if you're not, don't worry. We'll break it down in simple terms. The types aren't labels here, they're keys. This isn't about categories. It's about clarity, about seeing which philosophy your psyche may already be living without realizing it. That question is the difference between a Stoic and a Jungian. And if your default has been Stoicism, here's what that path really promises, and what it might be silently costing you. Stoicism begins with a simple premise. The world is chaos, but your response doesn't have to be. You don't control what happens, but you control how you meet it. This is the discipline of restraint, clear, clean, masculine. The Stoic ideal is self-governance through will. Don't complain, don't react. Reframe the problem. Turn pain into virtue. You become stronger by refusing to be ruled by what you cannot change. Marcus Aurelius said it best. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. And this philosophy works, especially for thinker-judger types like INTJ, ISTJ, ENTJ, ESTJ, the ones who crave structure, who default to internal systems, who live by the code. Don't let them hear the tremor beneath your silence. For these minds, Stoicism offers salvation. It reduces chaos. It offers clarity, boundaries, logic. But here's the hidden cost. You can detach so effectively, you lose your capacity to feel. You can become so in control that you amputate the parts of you that needed healing. Detachment without reflection isn't strength, it's anesthesia. And what you numb doesn't vanish. It calcifies, and it comes back in disguise. And if detachment numbs the wound, then the only remaining path is descent. That's where Jung begins. Now Carl Jung enters, quietly. No commandments, no disciplines, just this. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Where the Stoic builds a wall, Jung opens a door. Where the Stoic silences emotion, Jung listens for its message. You're not just reacting to life, Jung would say. You're reenacting it, projecting old wounds, reliving unconscious patterns, calling it love or ambition or destiny. But underneath it all, it's the shadow, speaking through repetition. The psyche isn't a problem to solve. It's a mystery to integrate. As Jung puts it, wholeness is not achieved by cutting off a portion of one's being, but by integration of the contraries. He doesn't want you to conquer fear. He wants you to ask, what part of me was never protected? Jung isn't interested in control. He's interested in transformation. But that transformation costs you the illusion of superiority. You don't get to float above your pain. You have to descend into it fully. But integration without discernment is just chaos. So what happens when either path is taken too far? Stoicism says, don't be ruled by emotion. But the deeper Stoics, like Marcus Aurelius, didn't bypass emotion. They felt everything before choosing detachment. If you are distressed by anything external, he wrote, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment. And Jungians? They plunge into shadow, yes, but Jung's message wasn't chaos. It was individuation, structure born through the integration of shadow. Stoicism and Jungianism aren't opposites, they're mirrors, and both are distorted when practiced in isolation. As Epictetus said, freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control. But what happens when the thing beyond your control is yourself? Now let's go deeper. What if you never chose your default? What if it was chosen by your type? Your personality doesn't choose philosophy, it avoids fear. For example, INTJs and ENTJs often think they're Stoics, but many are Jungians in armor, terrified not of weakness but of emotional disorder. INTJs lead with introverted intuition, NI, paired with extroverted thinking, TE, making them obsessed with inner patterns and outer structure. ENTJs flip this order. They lead with TE, driven by execution, output, and dominance, but both default to control as protection. The inner world is either ignored or optimized. Emotional chaos feels like failure, so Stoicism feels like home for them. Clean logic, mastery, autonomy. But beneath that clarity lies unprocessed grief, managed, but never metabolized. But for some INTJs, that's only the beginning. INFPs and INFJs, by contrast, wear the Jungian robe with ease. They dwell in symbolism, archetypes, and emotional resonance. But many are Stoics in disguise, spiritualizing chaos instead of confronting it. They turn pain into poetry, but avoid discipline. Depth becomes a refuge, not a structure. Type doesn't dictate your evolution, but it does reveal what you instinctively avoid. And what you avoid defines your ceiling. As Jung said, the inferior function is the door to the unconscious. And the unconscious? It waits until you're strong enough to open that door. Because underneath your MBTI label lies something deeper, a philosophy you didn't realize you were already practicing. Most people think MBTI just explains personality quirks, communication style, preferences, emotional rhythms, but that's the surface. Beneath it, your type is a philosophical stance, a default survival code. It's not just how you relate, it's how you protect. Your dominant function dictates which part of you stays online when things get hard, and your inferior function, the one you bury, is often the path to integration. That's why this video isn't about preferences. It's about your deepest avoidance. Stoicism and Jungianism aren't just ideas. They're the language of your inner defense system. Whether you default to discipline or dissent, control or chaos, it's not random. It's the consequence of your deepest fear. Let's now look at how each type expresses this philosophical defense through its dominant patterns. Let's begin with the builders of systems and insight, the ones who default to control, not emotion. INTJs and ENTJs both seek mastery, but from different directions. INTJs lead with inner vision, patterns, timelines, symbolic foresight. ENTJs lead with external execution, systems, outcomes, strategic impact. One is guided by insight, the other by efficiency. But both rely on thinking to manage emotion. When pain comes, their instinct isn't to feel it, it's to solve it. They optimize, they detach, they turn emotion into architecture, they control, they lead. But that's the trap. When emotional complexity rises, they don't feel it. They design around it. They turn trauma into timeline. They turn heartbreak into project plan. Marcus Aurelius becomes their mascot, but underneath the discipline lives a ghost, the part of them that never got to cry, only to rebuild. Their strength is real. But if they don't integrate their weakest function, introverted feeling, phi, the part of the psyche that holds inner values and emotional truth, they become brilliant machines with hollow hearts. But INTJs are different from ENTJs in one critical way. They are the rare bridge. While most types stay anchored in one philosophical default, INTJs often evolve, from Stoic logic to Jungian depth. They begin life mastering clarity and control, but their dominant introverted intuition eventually pulls them inward, toward symbols, toward shadow, toward the unconscious map beneath their logic. They don't just detach from pain, they start to decode it. And in that decoding, they begin to transform. Now step into the inner world of the emotional intuitives, the ones who see everything, but often carry it alone. INFPs and INFJs descend with ease. They live in symbolism, story, sacred pain. They understand the unconscious intuitively, but they often lack scaffolding. INFPs lead with introverted feeling, phi, a function tuned to inner values, authenticity, and emotional depth. INFJs lead with introverted intuition, ni, a visionary function that seeks hidden meaning and future insight. Both types are naturally drawn inward, but without strong extroverted structure, like extroverted thinking, TE, which organizes systems and action, or extroverted sensing, SE, which grounds them in the present. They swim in the shadow without surfacing. They process emotion endlessly, but don't always integrate it. They understand suffering, but struggle to turn it into sovereignty. Jungianism becomes a cave, not a bridge. Stoicism for them is medicine they resent but need, because without it, they drown in self-analysis and call it growth. Next, meet the guardians of structure, the types who don't seek philosophy but live it as ritual. ISTJs and ESTJs are builders of order, but from opposite angles. ISTJs lead with introverted sensing, psi, grounding themselves in internal precedent and lived experience. ESTJs lead with extroverted thinking, TE, focused on external results, structure, and command. Together, their psi-T combination forms a blueprint for stability. Stoicism doesn't feel like a philosophy to them. It feels like common sense. They find safety in control, predictability, and routine. Emotion to them is a threat to clarity. Jungian descent into the unconscious doesn't feel enlightening, it feels like chaos. But beneath that structure often lives exiled pain, never spoken, never honored. Many ISTJs and ESTJs live in scheduled lives with ungrieved losses. For them, integration isn't about feeling everything, it's about letting feeling exist at all. Because peace without depth is just numbness with discipline. Finally, we arrive at the open-hearted types, the ones who don't build walls but live with the door wide open. Sensitive, responsive, and often overwhelmed. ENFPs, ISFPs, and ENFJs arrive emotionally open. They feel the world before they understand it. Their danger isn't denial, it's overexposure. They confuse emotional expression with transformation. They collapse boundaries in the name of love. For them, Jungian work feels affirming. But without stoic clarity, it becomes emotional leakage. They need not less heart, but more spine. Integration isn't feeling more, it's holding more without dissolving. When they build boundaries around their depth, they become truly powerful, not just poetic. Here's the truth you won't find in MBTI books. You didn't choose your orientation. It was chosen for you, by your nervous system, by what kept you safe. Your dominant function is the survivor. Your inferior function is the buried child. The Stoicism you cling to may be the shell around your grief. The Jungianism you romanticize may be the maze you hide in. Jung said, "We do not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." And Marcus Aurelius reminded us, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." Both are true, but only together do they set you free. And now we arrive at the deeper mechanism beneath both, your nervous system's invisible contract. Here's the twist. Your philosophy might just be your nervous system in disguise. Misapplied Stoicism often mimics the freeze response, logic used not to gain clarity, but to shut down emotional overwhelm. It feels powerful because it avoids pain, but it's not mastery. It's paralysis dressed as discipline. Jungian descent, when unbalanced, can echo the fawn response, emotional merging disguised as insight. It feels deep because it hurts, but it's not transformation. It's enmeshment wrapped in myth. The psyche doesn't choose what's true, it chooses what feels safer, and it will do anything to avoid the other path. That's not clarity, that's trauma code. So ask yourself honestly, are you thinking or protecting? Are you feeling or dissolving? Are you growing or just surviving in style? Because if you want to transcend both trauma and persona, there's only one path left: integration. If you're stoic by nature, maybe it's time to stop performing strength and begin exploring the parts of you that still bleed. And if you're Jungian by instinct, maybe it's time to stop turning every wound into wisdom and start becoming someone who doesn't shatter at the edge of reality. The most terrifying thing, Jung said, is to accept oneself completely. But it's also the most freeing. The soul becomes great, he wrote, by encompassing opposites. That's the path, not choosing a side, but becoming whole. Your opposite isn't your enemy, it's your missing piece. So, are you living your default or your next evolution? You came here thinking this was just content, but now something's stirring. A discomfort, a question. Maybe it's not your thoughts that need changing, but the structure beneath them. Maybe the thing you've resisted is the exact thing you need to integrate. There is no coming to consciousness without pain, Jung warned, but there is no real power without it either. So before you scroll away, ask yourself one final question. Are you building sovereignty or just decorating your defenses? Subscribe, not for comfort, but for clarity. This isn't content. It's a mirror. And right now, it's showing you your opposite.